welcome back. And we're moving into our second segment for today as we sit down to have a conversation with new Speaker of the House, Madam Speaker Laura Tucker Longworth. Good morning and welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
And thank you for being here. We appreciate the opportunity to sit and have a candid conversation about assuming this very important role in the democracy of our country. So I want to start off, first of all, in terms of getting your reaction when you were approached as possibly assuming the Speaker's chair.
It was interesting. I was in a meeting when I got this call, and I said, that's strange. The Prime Minister is reaching out. There must be some emergency or something. And so I stepped outside of the meeting, and he proceeded to ask if I would consider it. And I was like, I really asked him if he was joking, because, and whether he thought that I could do something like that. Because I've done a lot of things in my life, but that was never on the horizon, never on the horizon. And so I said, let me think it over. And I went home and reflected all that day, consulted with a small group of family members and a close friend. And they were like, what? All this politics and all this negativity, what are you stepping into? Are you sure you can handle that? We don't think so. We don't think so. And so after I took note of everything, all the comments, I said, I looked at it and I said, but these reasons are not sufficient. Reasons for me to refuse to take on a very important position. And it was an honor to be asked, really, and as a woman as well, to be asked to become the Speaker of the House. And so I can tell you, apart from one family member who said, go for it, I went against the grain, but I think that with comfort, with the knowledge that I had looked at all the negativity and understood that they were not sufficient reasons for me not to accept.
What has the transition been like, though? Seeing as though this is something very much new to you.
Yes.
How has the acclimatization, if I may, been?
It's been interesting. What helps the whole transition is the structure. And you have a clerk and you have a deputy clerk, and they're like amazing, and the staff. And so the transition has been one of reading, going after information, and sitting down with the former speaker, who when we met, I said, okay, I have read everything. I need some insights, but start with the worst ones. Give me the worst
challenges.
Give me all the challenges. Tell me where the loopholes are. Tell me what the difficulties could be. Tell me what I need to focus on, because this is moving fast. And he did an excellent job in doing that and directing me to the standing orders, the areas that I have to absolutely pay attention to.
Interestingly, you coming on board as a new Speaker of the House, I think for quite a number of people, they look at it as, okay, this is refreshing, because it's a departure from what a lot of viewers have come to accept as normal behavior and decorum in this honorable house. What has that been like for you in terms of the challenge to sort of bring order and bring a sense of decency back to the house?
It's interesting, because I know that's easier said than done, because of that institutional culture that is there for these lively discussions in the house, and these, I call it grandstanding a lot of the times in terms of the camera and so on. And so I moved in there not with a lot of expectations that things would change overnight, but certainly with the intent to do the best that I can do to maintain order and decorum in the house.
Yeah. Now, it's interesting because you assume the role as Madam Speaker after one of the wildest displays we have ever seen in the House of Representatives. And I think that obviously being appointed to the post or being asked to take on the post, you have actually gotten the support of the opposition.
Yes.
In terms of believing that you can and will be able to bring back that sense of decorum back into the House. That's a huge
Yes.
responsibility. What do you think about your personality will allow for what are, in my mind, two of the most important qualities? Firm and fair treatment.
Well, if you ask my nursing students about being firm and fair, they can perhaps answer that better than I can. And if you ask my children about firm and fair, they may also be able to give you a better glimpse into that. As actually, one of my daughters was at the first sitting for most of the day or half of the morning. And she said, Mom, the following day, she said, Mom, do you think that using those stern eyes that you use on us will have an impact on those honorable members of the House?
Yeah.
And I said, well, maybe it will and maybe it won't, but it's a matter of us both getting used to each other. And so I think that we need to give each other cues
Yeah.
in terms of the climate that
Yeah.
persists. I also know that members of the opposition they have pledged their support and have asked that all they need from me is to be fair. And the honorable members from the government side, the honorable ministers, have pledged their support in trying to control their emotions as well. I think that House meetings tend to be lively, and when you look at the international ones as well, they're nothing short of.
Their shoes thrown across
They're quite lively.
Yeah.
And I think that it's been interesting because the two sessions that I've had, I've actually had a chance to look at the dynamics across the room and to understand that there's all constant interaction, and the interaction is not often picked up by the camera. And so while the public is fuming on many instances, if they could see that the members in the House are much more cordial to each other across the room than the camera picks up.
Then when they get up and make a presentation.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
The distinction of being named the Speaker of the House
Yes.
is one where not too many women have sat in that chair. What does that mean to you as a Belizean woman who is not only prominent in the society for other reasons, but what does it mean for you as someone that young ladies look up to, for instance?
You know, I think that perhaps that's one of the reasons I took it on. And I like your term, prominent in the community for a reason. That's interesting.
I could list off all the other stuff.
We could debate that. But certainly, I certainly took that into consideration. I think that as a woman, coming through all my years, I think that I've done that work. And I feel like oftentimes we do so much work behind the scenes that we should be stepping up and taking our rightful place, whether it's in politics or in leadership roles, so that perhaps we can bring a different perspective and a different dynamic to whatever situation. I've been in leadership roles all my life, and so When I accepted it, it was like I stood up and I said, wow, maybe I was preparing for this all my life and didn't know. Certainly, it's not something that I planned to do, but I didn't see myself backing away from it when it presented. I think it's important for women to see me step up into such a difficult role, because it's political, and if you rule against one side, you're going to come under fire. And if you rule against the other, they'll quarrel with you. But that's so what? It's a matter of dealing with the house rules.
Let me dive into that point a little bit deeper, because I think part of the reason many people, not just women, shy away from taking up leadership positions that perhaps are political appointments is that if you're appointed by a particular party, they feel that you will forever be aligned to that party. You have never been aligned to either political party, and you understood that assuming this role, there would be persons who would make that assumption. How did you overcome that part in making your decision?
Because it's clear that I'm not a partisan politician kind of thing. Sure, I align myself with a particular group, political group, but I'm not a partisan type of person. And all my life I have had to work with everybody in the community, and that makes a big difference. And when I looked, and even so, and I'm glad that I took it on, because when I look at the standing orders, for instance, there are rules and regulations to guide you. And as I said, even before I was sworn in, so what you mentioned, what happened in the house, that was so chaotic. And I, because of I've gone through nursing, health systems, the worst kinds of situation. I have been confronted with those kinds of situations before, so I think I bring that experience to the table. But it can easily happen where I can come under extreme fire for making a ruling that either side feels like was unfair or otherwise. But the standing orders are clear. And I think and I also understand that the honorable members of the House need to make their point for their constituents. And they have a right to stand up and pursue what they need to pursue. But it must be within the guidelines created by the Constitution.
Absolutely.
For the proceedings of the House.
Let me just follow up there, because I think you were speaking before of stepping up as a woman in leadership. And I think that oftentimes people tend to have an impression, the larger society tends to have an impression that if a female is in leadership, there is a softer approach. And I want to give you the opportunity to address that for people who may feel that, okay, well, you'll come and maybe the work of the House may be diluted to some extent, because we all, as Belizeans, want the proper ventilation when it comes to national issues, that we can understand that all our concerns collectively are being heard depending on who is representing us and in what capacity. How do you respond to that?
I respond to that as I did earlier. I bring a number of years of experience to the table, and I actually, when I wondered what I would do in terms of my advanced degree in nursing, I chose management. I chose health systems management because I thought that there had to be different ways of doing things that can actually get you better results with whatever you do, use of resources or otherwise. And so I realized that I am a transformational leader. And while I am objective, I can be very opinionated a lot of the times and direct. The directness is what a lot of people have some difficulties with. Those things are based on evidence. And so in transformational leadership, you have to be emotionally intelligent to sense the climate and the atmosphere, whether you proceed, you move back, or you change your you change your strategy to get to where you want to be.
Yeah.
And so that, I think, is what I bring to the table.
Yeah.
And I want to, my reference in terms of who I am can be with the communities that I serve. For instance, even the organizations, the Cancer Society and the National AIDS Commission. And when you work, let's take the National AIDS Commission, it's not an easy commission to work with. One, not only because you have to deal with the sensitivity of key populations, the whole issues of human rights that comes to the fore, and very important issues, but you also have to deal with managing a fund, global fund, that has specific guidelines and so on. And it creates a lot of problems when you have to be working with different groups, with government, global fund, your key populations, and your wider population. So I think that helps a lot.
Yeah.
You know.
Talk to us a bit about FOPREL. I know that Belize has assumed chairmanship. Will assume pro-tem chairmanship.
In fact, you leave the end of this
Yes.
week. Yes.
Talk to us a bit about that and the experience that is to come, seeing as though you're new to all of this.
Diving into the deepest end of the
Well,
pool,
they
right?
call it baptism by fire. That's what we. I have to admit I don't know a lot of what I'm getting into, but certainly the former speaker did an excellent job while he attended those memberships. Belize is taking over the presidency on Friday of this week. What is nice about FOPREL, they're like an assembly themselves, because it's a body of legislators, speakers and presidents of the legislative assemblies throughout Central America and some countries in the Caribbean. And so they have, like our own National Assembly, they have standing committees. And Belize sits on the Education and Health Committee, which is right up my street. Yes, that's right up there. And I know in the past, for instance, right now, coming out of previous discussions with the previous speaker, a proposed legislation was created for all the countries to use, and we are certainly looking at it. It had to do with childhood nutrition to address obesity and marketing of foods and so on, which is excellent. So I'm looking forward to the whole session. My challenges is the Spanish speaking issue, but I'm going to find a way to overcome that, and I think we'll have translators and so on. Yeah.
What do you hope to be your impact in being the Speaker of the House?
I have reflected on that a lot, and I've been reading in terms of what women legislators do all over the world. I was even contacted by a woman speaker from Montserrat, and she actually heads the Commonwealth Parliamentary Women's Group Committee in the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association. And so I'm looking forward to working in those aspects, because women parliamentarians, we need to be able to take on issues of gender, issues of human rights, and all those issues of violence, all those things that really we're sensitive to, and those things that we affect. So I'm looking forward to engaging other parliamentarians, women parliamentarians, and aspiring women politicians in getting involved in the wider sphere, so that confidence can be there and people can start stepping up to these positions.
Let me ask a very specific question. It has been seen for a very long time, because we don't have that many women in leadership positions, that for a very long time this boys club is allowed to speak in a way that is very derogatory to each other, but also to others. There have been situations in the past where members of the House have spoken in manners that are very derogatory to women in general. Sexist comments. And they were not rebuked the way women groups or human rights activists or decent human beings thought that they should have. Have you had a conversation about having a zero policy towards these type? I mean, they don't necessarily go against the standing orders. I'm
No,
not fully
no.
acquainted with the
Yes,
standing orders,
yes.
but it's very easy when it's a more male-dominated
Absolutely.
area that sexism and that kind of
blurs.
derogatory
Yes.
speech
Mm-hmm.
can
And I don't know, but I would suspect that it is so. And I do look forward to meeting with our women parliamentarians to discuss those issues. There are several things that comes to mind. Those issues, the whole issue of the language and the whole issue of sexism in the house, but there's also the issue of security that I think we could do better on in the house in terms of creating more. I've looked at the settings, and I think that in this climate, we need to be sure that we do a little bit more in securing the building. But I also want to see us in the house becoming more involved in educating the community on, for instance, issues relating to Parliament, issues relating to the Guatemalan issue, you know, those kinds of things. And I think that we need to maintain a bigger presence so that that environment and that perception of who legislators are can change. That's where I go because of what I do. That comes naturally for me.
I believe that there should be a concerted effort to reshape the image of the house. I think for the most part there's been a sort of degradation in terms of the way we look at parliamentarians, their behavior. We look at the assembly building and all of that.
Yes.
What do you think can be done to make this kind of a change where people once again begin to believe in the power of what comes out of that house and its effect on Belizeans?
I think that as a speaker, I need to work with the parliamentarians, and if there are things that are happening that's not quite good, especially for perception, or that is really should not be occurring in the house, I think that we need to meet and work out these issues. I think that I always enjoy a cup of coffee, and I do think, or a cup of tea. And I do have a coffee pot. They gave me a coffee pot in my office. And I think that we could sit down and talk about ways to overcome those issues. So far, I don't see any of the bad things that have occurred in the house. I don't see any of those as something that can't be addressed on a one-to-one and as a group. But certainly, I think that I would like to see us really taking our rightful place in the community in terms of promoting the legislature and promoting what is happening and get, especially for the young people, it'd be nice to start regular scheduled visits for them to the house and having them understand what happens to the house, how bills are made, how acts are passed, and so on.
That is such a key point, and I actually wanted to touch on that a bit because a lot of times people have not had any exposure to being at a house meeting, and we have very easily reached to the point where we dismiss what takes place there. We see the mudslinging and we feel we never get to issues. Would you advocate for more schools, for more professionals to be able to come in, other than the political party supporters who take up the space in there?
Absolutely. I'd love to see our university students coming in and our high school students. And I said something, and I think on the first day, and I really, really feel strongly about it because I think that we need to move away from opinions and other people's, this one, we need to use the evidence. And within health, we use evidence to make decisions. And so when something happens in a house, it should be analyzed against the backdrop of the standing orders of the house. So if I do not allow somebody to speak, then the student take it into the classroom and say, well, was she right or was she wrong? And based on so and so, perhaps she missed that, and which is quite possible. Sometimes you make a bad call. At other times, the decorum of the house is there for you to manage. And so then there's some things, if you're going to ask a question, for instance, of the in the minister's section where questions are asked, your questions cannot be opinions.
Yeah.
They have to be direct, and it can't be ambiguous. It has to be 1, 2, 3, and you know, those kinds of things. If there's a select inquiry going on now, you cannot discuss that. And it's written in the standing orders. You can't discuss that. Or if something is in the court, you cannot. You can't impugn the chair. You can't look at me, at the speaker, and say that you're a thief. You're this. You cannot do that.
Yeah. One of my observations, having attended quite a number of House meetings, is the fact that members on both sides of the floor tend to prevaricate a lot. They tend to beat around the bush and try to sneak in certain things in there, and then they would have to be corrected based on what the standing orders
Would
are.
you believe that's the biggest challenge I've had so far? That's the biggest challenge, because you have to listen intently, and a lot of times both sides get away with it, because if one side does it, you have to allow the other side some leeway to do certain things. But certainly the standing orders speak to that issue, and so I can easily start getting them to narrow their. In fact, I did it last time.
So would you say that the adjustment period, given the past 2 sittings, is over and you're moving into your way of doing things now?
Well, it's beginning. It's beginning to take shape.
Well, very timely as well, because we're moving into budget preparations and debates. So we'll be seeing a lot more of you.
Oh, yes, in March. So I'm grounded in March. I have to be in Belize for March.
Well, we appreciate you coming in and having this conversation with us and telling us about what the opportunity means for you on the personal level, but most importantly, what impact you want to make in the country and in our democracy.
And I look forward to coming back with the clerk of the House and the deputy clerk. They do a lot of work, very interesting, fascinating work.
We can come and talk to people about the standing order so they can understand as well, and we can be managing or keeping track of what's happening.
I look forward to that. I'll hold you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
Thank you.
We're going to go ahead and take a break. When we come back, we'll be joined by representatives of the Kidney Association of Belize. So stay tuned.